Let's get right to it. Immigration policy is sure to be a major issue in the 2018 election, but we're not talking about the United States. In Italy, polls for the upcoming March 4th election show that a center-right populist coalition could win the most seats, due largely to Italy's continuing immigration crisis. Italy was able to stem some of the migration tide in 2017 after cutting a deal with Libya to stop smugglers before they ferry migrants across the Mediterranean. Still, in the last 2 years, more than 7,000 migrants have died attempting to reach Italy. In all, some 600,000 migrants have settled in the country over the last 4 years. Former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi said in his Forward Italy party, it's part of a growing coalition, he says, or a governing coalition. They will push for immigration reform, including the return of those 600,000 migrants to their respective home countries. And a warning from the Oakland mayor stifled a Northern California immigration sweep this week. According to federal officials, Mayor Libby Schaaf, warning 2 days ahead of Immigration and Custom Enforcement sweeps, prevented the arrest of some 800 illegal immigrants. ICE Chief Thomas Homan derided Schaaf, calling her the equivalent of a gang snitch who yells police when a police cruiser comes into the neighborhood. Homan said the mayor further endangered her city as well as ICE officers. 150 illegal immigrants were arrested in cities from Sacramento to California's Central Valley. The Justice Department is looking into whether Mayor Schaaf obstructed justice. She insists she broke no law. We'll talk about that in a moment. There were 2 U.S. court decisions affecting immigration policy this week. A U.S. district judge sided with President Donald Trump on Tuesday over a challenge to the building of a wall along the Mexican border. Judge Curiel, you'll remember that name, rejected claims by the state of California and advocacy groups that the administration needed to conduct environmental impact reviews before constructing the wall. A 2005 law gave Homeland Security broad authority to waive such reviews. And the U.S. Supreme Court is denying for now a review of President Trump's termination of DACA, the Obama-era directive that has allowed hundreds of thousands of children brought to the U.S. illegally to remain without fear of deportation. Set to expire on March 5th, 2 federal judges had issued national injunctions ordering the administration to keep DACA in place while courts consider legal challenges to Trump's termination of the program. The president attempted to bypass the appellate courts and instead appealed directly to the Supreme Court to rule on the matter. California's Ninth Circuit Court is likely to hear the case next. Trump didn't seem to hold out much hope of winning there, criticizing the liberal-leaning court, saying on Monday, nothing's as bad as the Ninth Circuit. With the fate of DACA still up in the air in Congress, Catholic activists held a march in support of so-called Dreamers right here in Washington this week. To discuss immigration policy and the Catholic response is the Senior Director of International Migration Policy at the Center for Migration Studies and former USCCB Director of Migration Policy, Kevin Appleby. And next to him is Resident Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, Andrew Arthur. Kevin, Andrew, thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir.
I want to start with, you heard about those 2 federal courts issuing national injunctions which prevent the president from ending DACA. Now, the Supreme Court on Monday declined to consider the administration's expedited appeal of those injunctions. The president wanted to end this program in March. Are the courts being used as political weapons in this conversation and debate over DACA? Andrew.
Absolutely. And quite frankly, Judge Alsup and Judge Garofis, their decisions just don't make sense. Quite frankly, they say that this is a purely discretionary act by the administration, and then they say that the administration can't undo it. It doesn't make any sense. So.
Kevin?
The courts are part of our government. They're a branch of the government. They have equal power. The Supreme Court gave a tip of the hat to the Dreamers here. They said, we're going to give you more time. We're going to give Congress more time to settle this the right way legislatively. On the merits, the Trump administration will probably win eventually. But I think what the Supreme Court is saying is, like, you have to go through regular order here before we're going to take this up and rule on the merits.
Yeah, we have to remember the DACA plan was done with the stroke of President Obama's pen. And in fairness to him, and we should say, because, you know, I try to place all this in context, both for myself and for the viewers, the courts were used, and I would argue politicized in a horrible way during the Obama administration, because you had a lot of Republican AGs in states saying, well, we don't want to implement Obamacare or this. So they started using these group, you know, torts to try to stop or impede these executive acts. Now, they are executive orders, and that should be set up front. So does Congress have a responsibility to find a solution here to this DACA problem?
The fact is that DACA was an unconstitutional usurpation of Congress's power. So, yes, this properly belongs with Congress. And I do agree with Kevin. I believe that what the Supreme Court is saying is, Congress, this is your job, and we expect you to do it.
You want to respond?
It really, the legal question doesn't matter. With the Trump administration's position, Congress has to act, or it will go out of existence.
I want to read you something President Trump tweeted the other day, because he feels that the Congress is not doing enough to both check off the benchmarks that he has established for immigration reform and solving this DACA thing. He did offer to normalize and legalize 1.8 million people. So far, the Democrats have not taken him up on that deal. He tweeted, Dems are no longer talking DACA. Out of sight, out of mind, they say. DACA beneficiaries should not be happy. Nancy Pelosi truly doesn't care about them. Republicans should stand ready to make a deal. Reactions?
Laughable. I mean, President Trump is the one that torpedoed the one bipartisan compromise, which included his wall, by the way, that could have passed.
Which was that?
It was the bipartisan compromise from Collins and Manchin that got 54 votes, and then Grassley's, who got only 39, which is what the administration wanted, had no chance whatsoever. And President Trump said, we're going to lobby against the bill that even has a chance. So what's significant here is that I think he's blown his chance to really get his wall. This was his big chance. The Democrats were going to give him the wall in exchange for DACA or exchange for
but he wants chain migration to end. There are other benchmarks here that they didn't, none of those bills provided. I mean, and they didn't fully fund the wall, did they, Andrew?
No, they didn't. And here's the thing. Anytime that you have an amnesty, and regularizing the status of 1.8 million people is an amnesty, you have two effects. One, you have additional people entering the United States illegally, and two, you have chain migration. The president acted in the way that he did in order to ameliorate those two negative impacts of the amnesty. Quite frankly, I don't understand why Congress doesn't understand that and doesn't act.
Okay, I want to get your opinion on something. This happened last Tuesday. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops had called for a national call-in day for the protection of dreamers. They were encouraging Catholics to call their representatives in Congress to urge them to support these young adults, dreamers, they're called. I've spoken to some Catholics who say there's also an argument here that the bishops, regardless of their good intention, are supporting people who are breaking the law. Your reaction?
I agree with those people completely. The fact is that when you support the Dreamers in this context, again, you encourage more people to enter the United States illegally. And when you do that, you do nothing but you support the criminal gangs on the other side of the border that bring people to the United States and the cartels that benefit from the smuggling trade.
But at the same time, these people were not, they didn't enter here. Their parents brought them along. So they are kind of caught between the cracks here. Well, I mean, you got to do something with them. And some of these people, they're not, see, I think it's disingenuous to say they're little kids or young people. These people have been here for 20, 25 years. They're adults.
When they entered, they didn't enter on their own volition. They themselves didn't break the law. And none of the bills really gave the parents a path to citizenship. It was to help the kids. And this is why the bishops thought it was a high priority for them, that this is an injustice. These are kids that are stateless, really. And are you going to send them back to countries they don't know? They don't even speak the language. For them, it's a moral issue.
No, I mean, I can understand that. I think a lot of Catholics, well, you see in some of the polling, people want a solution for these kids. The question is, how do you get there? Because at the same time, they do want increased border security. They do want the wall. These numbers show, and they also don't want more people breaking through the border either. There's got to be a balance here. There's got to be a balance. And I do worry that in the Catholic context, we have reached a point where if you don't fully support a total relaxation of immigration laws and no border controls at all, you're suddenly not considered a good Catholic. This is a non-essential issue. This is not a non-negotiable. This is kind of Catholics can differ on this issue and the way to approach it.
They can.
Prudential.
But in fairness, the bishops have supported border security in the past. In fact, they supported this bipartisan compromise.
They don't support the wall.
Well,
that's for sure.
They supported the bipartisan compromise that gave the president $25 billion because it had the Dreamers in it. So it's not as black and white. You know?
Okay, I want to move on to this, and I want your reaction to this, Andrew. On Tuesday, a small group of Catholics protested on Capitol Hill, hoping to pressure Congress into making some decision on the DACA people we've been discussing. The PICO National Network, along with a group called Faith in Public Life and the D.C. Catholic Coalition, organized this day of action. Now, PICO's been known for their work in advancing women's theology of liberation, other radical feminist and womanist theology movements. Faith in Public Life lobbies against the church regularly on abortion, marriage. In fact, it's a very active abortion proponent at the UN. Now, according to WikiLeaks, there were documents from George Soros' foundation. Both of these organizations received $650,000 in 2015 from the Soros Foundation to shift, quote, the priorities of the U.S. Catholic Church. How representative are these protests, and we're putting some of them up on the screen, how representative is this of the Catholic people and where they are today on this issue?
I think the Catholics are an open-hearted people, and that's why they have sympathy for these individuals. But I think that the rank-and-file Catholics in the United States also understand that we need border security, we need to stop people entering the United States illegally, and we need to have the rule of law. So I don't think they're representative at all.
I mean, it's a big church, okay? So these are people who are on the left who feel strongly about this issue. They have a right to protest. They have a right to get arrested if they choose.
If they don't have a permit. Yeah.
Right. You know, so I don't see a problem with it. And it sort of reminds Congress they're not off the hook on this issue. Just because they lost some bills and the courts acted doesn't mean they don't have a responsibility.
So but I had to laugh when I saw some in the Catholic media covering this like Mother Teresa was in a pro-life march being dragged off to the gulag, when, you know, these are clearly community activists and organizers, and they're kind of the old hard left. I mean, poor Tom Reese, Father Tom Reese is there in the microphone, you know, whipping up the troops, and the poor sisters in the purple T-shirts.
They're doing it in the spirit of, the pro-life groups that do the same thing.
Well,
I know you think that's not morally equivalent, and
it isn't morally. It isn't morally.
That's another issue. That's another.
You think they're morally equivalent?
No, I'm not.
You think immigration and border security is equal to abortion?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I'm just saying that doesn't mean they can't use those tactics or express themselves on the issue they believe in.
Sure, no. I support their right to protest. The question is, how representative is it? Does this represent the vast majority of Catholic people? And I would argue the vast majority of Catholic people are kind of just letting Congress handle this. It's a prudential judgment they think Congress should handle. They settle it at the ballot box.
90% of the American public support the Dreamers, so I'm sure there are a lot of Catholics.
Depends on the poll. That Harris-Harvard poll, you saw the numbers went in the other direction.
Pretty much overwhelming.
What are your thoughts on this? Because it does seem the polling, there's discrepancies here, Andrew.
I think that the American people, part of the reason that Donald Trump, in fact, a big reason Donald Trump got elected, was because people saw a border that was out of control, saw an immigration system, immigration laws were not being enforced. And I think that, much like the American people, the Catholic American people want to see order in our system. We're big-minded, we're big-hearted people. We want to bring people into the United States, but we want to do it the right way, and we want to do it legally.
Can I just say something about the border being out of control? Studies are showing that people overstay their visas more than they come across the border, and that, in fact, the undocumented population is going down. So I'd like some more specifics on how the border is out of control.
Oh, and I can give them. I mean, tens of thousands of children in 2014, 2016, and Kevin knows this, came across the border, and they violated
and jumped
the border.
Into the arms of the Border Patrol. They weren't trying to evade.
Because they knew that they could take advantage of the loopholes in the law that President Trump wants to close. When we talk about border security, we're not just talking about the wall. We're also talking about loopholes in the law that allow unaccompanied alien children to come to the United States, and then ICE is expected, HHS.
Catch and release.
Exactly.
No,
to fulfill the role of the smugglers once they get to the United States and deliver them to their families.
Go ahead, Kevin.
These kids are fleeing for their lives. I mean, gangs are chasing them. If they got sent back, they'd be killed. But that's why they're coming.
That's a blanket statement that I don't think the Kevin can support.
Yeah.
Well,
I'll give you. We've got several reports.
Look, we've all been to Mexico, Guatemala. I've been to Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia. I've been to these countries. it breaks your heart. My father's from Guatemala. He was raised there. You go there today, aside from Antigua, which is spectacular, the old town, the rest of the city is really heartbreaking.
They're dangerous places.
But here's the point. Isn't it the Catholics' responsibility, both in the global church as well as the local church, to make life better for the people in their homeland, not force them or encourage them to run north to a place they've never known and a culture not their own?
The church is doing great work down there.
Right.
They really but they can't do it alone.
But we should do more of it. And I worry that we are, and this is the concern that I hear from both border agents and people along the border who are good Catholic people, and they're seeing their communities fall apart. Not because they're not loving and welcoming people, but because you do have a problem along the border with crime and lawlessness, and they have to live with the first line effects of that. That frankly, we up in Virginia and in other parts of the country, it's just not a reality for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, some of the border communities are the safest cities in the country. The Bishop of El Paso, Mark Seitz, will be up next week. He comes from the safest city in the country, and that's right on the border. So you need to talk to the border communities about that.
Okay, I want to move on to something very quickly, and it's on Tuesday it was reported that 150 arrests were made in California. ICE agents had a big immigration sweep. About half of those arrested have criminal convictions. Now, during the sweep, the mayor of Oakland, Libby Schaaf, sent out an alert that the sweeps were happening before they commenced. In a statement, she said this about alerting the community. We'll put it up on the screen. My statement on Saturday was meant to give all residents time to learn their rights and know their legal options. It was my intention that one mother or one father would use the information to help keep their family together. I do not regret sharing this information. It is Oakland's legal right to be a sanctuary city, and we have not broken any laws. We believe our community is safer when families stay together. Was that within her legal rights? I'll start with you, Kevin.
I think so. I mean, what's wrong with letting people know that they have rights that they have to assert?
But she blew the whistle ahead of time, which is what the head of ICE said.
You don't need the mayor of Oakland to let immigrants know that they're in danger with this administration. I mean, they're already in the shadows. They're already fearful. And they're already knowing that, they could be deported at any moment. So I don't think a tweet by a mayor is really going to make a big difference with the community. So,
Andrew?
It's no different than the gang lookout on the corner who yells when the cops come by to warn the drug dealers to run away. That's exactly what this is, morally equivalent to that.
Now, the ICE,
a little overreach there.
The head of ICE, Thomas Homan, said this endangered not only his ICE agents, but the community at large, because it wasn't the moms and dads who suddenly found safe houses. It was the criminal elements. It was the MS-13 guys who, they went running. So half of the people rounded up in this sweep didn't have criminal records. Mm-hmm. He's estimating that maybe 800 arrests were missed as a result of this mayor's action. Your thought on that?
Well, Mr. Homan doesn't necessarily have to let the mayor of any mayor know actually what they're doing.
No, it leaked. Somebody leaked this to her.
Right.
He didn't know. He didn't alert her, obviously.
Well, whatever the case may be, they have a right to go, enforce the law when they want. So, however it happened, it was done, and maybe he's right that it did have some circumstances like that, but I don't think the mayor of Oakland was beyond her legal rights to do that.
Andrew?
I disagree wholeheartedly. I come from a police family. My aunt and uncle were both cops, and the one thing that you worry about is the knock on the door at night to tell you that your loved one is dead. When you give criminals notice that ICE is coming to them, they're able to arm themselves, and they're able to attack the ICE agents that come. The first dead ICE agent, the first injured ICE agent is on Libby Schaaf's head.
Well, the Justice Department is exploring whether she violated
that'll be interesting to see how that comes
justice.
out.
We'll see how that investigation turns out. Gentlemen, as always, thank you for the spirit and your insight.